Hi, you're on Category Chat with George Prochaska of the Industrial Products and Services category. Today we've got a special guest. His name is Victor Alessandro. He's a subject matter expert that works in category management, and he comes from the private sector. I'm going to ask Victor a couple of questions about how category management worked in the private sector, and then what his role is in moving it to the public sector. So, hi, Victor. How you doing today?
I'm doing well, George. How are you?
Good. Thanks for joining me. I understand you're down in San Antonio, Texas. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Good. Well, give us a little bit of background on yourself.
Well, I was one of the first category managers at the first company that did category management, which was HEB Grocery, actually in San Antonio, Texas.
Wow.
Yeah, it was an interesting time because things were new, and everything we did at that time was groundbreaking. We literally had people come from all over the world to study what we were doing because it worked so well.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
The first 18 months, they quintupled the net earnings.
Man.
It was a big deal, yeah.
Yeah, so you got some really positive results in a hurry, it sounds like.
Yeah, very. And I think most people have the experience. It hadn't been quite that rapid as HEB, but that was because their execution was, exemplary at that time.
So what were a couple of things y'all put in process there that helped you so much?
Well, I think there were a couple of things that were key. One, we very much believed in developing the expertise of the category manager. And our category managers really were true experts in their subject matter. We had people that actually knew patents on products. They were experts to that level of detail. Experts in the consumer behavior within their categories. And then the other thing that was significant is the supplier relations. We realized that the supplier community had a lot of expertise that we frankly had not tapped up until that point.
Wow.
And so we really developed partnerships with our suppliers, and they shared information with us, and we shared information with them, and everybody got better as a result.
Well, I think that's pretty neat. So there's two principles. One was have the category managers really understand a lot about their category, but the second was supplier relationship management. Now, Victor, I understand you are really focused on bringing that second part to the government. Can you give us a little bit background on what you've been doing?
Well, sure. One of the things that I think is important, obviously, as a result of the experience in the private sector, is developing these types of relationships with suppliers. And I think we started to do that. We formed a supplier relationship panel for the industrial products and services category, which I think has been an interesting experience, just working through the legal issues that had to be handled and then finding the right partners to start the first panel.
Sure.
And then getting that process going. So far, I think it's been very successful.
And what kind of mix of suppliers do you have on the panel?
It's really interesting, an interesting mix because some of these things weren't necessarily done by design. But we've got about half the mix of the suppliers on the panel are small business, about half are large business. And we actually are fortunate enough in the industrial products and services category, there's essentially 7 subcategories. And we have representation in every one of the subcategories except basic materials.
Wow, that's really neat. So now, what was the focus? I understand you've been doing this for about a year now. About how many vendors did you reach out before you started the panel, and what has been your focus since you've started the panel?
Well, the focus was to get somewhere between 8 and 12 suppliers, and we ended up with 11. Every supplier we spoke to, every one of them decided they wanted to participate. And with the conversations we've had subsequently, I think they're all very happy they have joined.
Great.
The small businesses particularly have felt like they've really benefited from getting the information and the ability to exchange information.
And Victor, I understand before you kind of narrowed it down to this smaller group, you had somewhere in the neighborhood of 300 different conversations or meetings with vendors before you started that panel. Is that right?
Yes, and it wasn't just me. I mean, we used the entire SSAC, the Southwest Center, to try and identify which suppliers we wanted to, partner with initially. And then the intent is we'll keep these guys on the panel for a limited amount of time and then rotate new suppliers in to keep the dialogue fresh and continue to be a source of new ideas.
Great. And so now what was the focus of your effort in that first year? How'd you spend most of the time with those suppliers?
Well, really the first time was just establishing the foundation for a good relationship, trying to build trust. We frankly did a lot of listening. I think primarily that's what we did was listen.
Mm-hmm.
And try to take those ideas and the comments back and put them in a format that hopefully could be actionable for the government.
That's really neat, because I understand one of the first asks of the suppliers is, what would you like out of this? And if I remember right, they said, we'd really like to just have a voice.
Right. Yeah, there's definitely a need that they want to be heard. But I think it's beyond just being heard. They want to be heard by people that can actually do something.
Mm-hmm.
And, as you well know, that really is the challenge, because the government's big, and it's not always easy to turn requests into action.
So how's it going on that front? Have you been able to provide the suppliers any avenues where they could be heard by people of influence?
Well, yeah, I think they have. I mean, we've had several really important speakers. Alan Thomas, the new FAST commissioner, came to one of our meetings and actually spoke, and that was very well received. And then we had Leslie Field from OMB, OFPP. She came and did a very good job also with the suppliers. And then most recently we had Mark Lee come, who's the Director of Acquisition Policy and Compliance.
Wow, you've had some heavy hitters there. I mean, Leslie Field is the acting administrator for OFPP. She's kind of the person that's really had a lot to do with category management taking hold in the government, right?
Yeah, she has. And I got to say one thing. Leslie made the offer to the suppliers that if they wanted to meet with her while they were in D.C., that she'd do it. And then she actually did it. She actually met with one of the small business suppliers after that meeting.
And did you get a chance to talk to that small business supplier and see what she thought about that meeting?
Yeah, I did. And she thought that Leslie, listened to or heard her and is actually going to do something with some of her suggestions. So, I really don't think it could have gone any better.
That's really neat. So one last question, Victor, to wrap this up. What are your hopes that you will achieve out of this supplier relationship panel, maybe in the short run and in the longer run?
Well, I think in the short run, we'd like to continue to keep the dialogue flowing both ways. I think that's critical to the success. And in the longer run, we'd like to turn some of our dialogue and some of our efforts into actual results that benefit financially both the suppliers and the government.
Oh,
And we'd like to see them work with us on trying to get trying to reduce contracts on both sides, and hopefully trying to get the spend that is currently being used into government-wide vehicles.
That would really help achieve, help the category achieve those category management goals, it sounds like. Spend under management, savings, contract consolidation, small business increase.
I think it also would work out well for the supplier community as well. I think this is a win-win for everybody.
Yeah, it sounds like the opportunity for more volume and less burden on them. They'd have better chance to utilize those contracts that they've already negotiated with the government rather than having to do open market. Well, Victor, you're right. I mean, it sounds like a win-win deal for everybody. Thanks for making some time to be with us, and thanks for taking a sabbatical from the private sector to come over to the government side and help us learn something from you. Thanks so much.
Anytime, George. I'm happy to help.
All the best.
Thanks. You too.